My sister called me useless and said I'd always be broke, so I bought her dream house at auction, then raised the rent until she had to move. I'm a 28-year-old guy, and for as long as I can remember, I've always been treated as the failure of my family. My older sister, Emily, was the golden child, always praised for her accomplishments, while I was the one who could never live up to their expectations. She was always the star of the show, the one who got the scholarships, the promotions, the praise. And me? I was the afterthought, the one who never seemed to get it right. The more I tried, the further I seemed to fall. I dropped out of college, struggled to hold down a steady job, and moved from one dead-end position to the next. My family's pitying glances and the constant comparison to Emily were suffocating. My mom would say things like, "Why can't you be more like Emily?" Or, "She's going places. What about you?" But things truly began to unravel when I hit rock bottom financially. I was barely scraping by, living paycheck to paycheck. One evening, I was sitting at the dinner table when Emily walked in, flashing her newest promotion. A fancy office, more money, and the life that seemed so far out of reach for me. As usual, the conversation turned to her perfect life, and I just sat there pretending I was fine. But then it happened. She looked at me, a slight smirk playing at the corners of her mouth, and said, "You're really still stuck, huh? I guess some people are just born to be failures." Her words cut deeper than any knife could. "You're useless," she said. "You'll never make it. You'll always be broke. The worst part? It wasn't just her saying it to me. It was the way everyone at the table nodded in agreement. I felt invisible. I wasn't just the black sheep of the family. I was the joke. My mom, my dad, even my aunt, they all thought the same thing, that I'd never amount to anything. But that's when something inside me snapped. Something fierce, something cold. I wasn't going to be her punching bag anymore. I wasn't going to let her or anyone define my worth. As Emily went on, blabbering about her success, I stared at her. I didn't say anything at first, but in that moment I knew. I was going to prove her wrong. I was going to show her, and everyone, that I was more than just a screw-up. What happened next would change everything, and Emily would have no idea what was coming. The days that followed were a blur of humiliation and quiet anger. Emily's words echoed in my mind every night as I lay awake, trying to ignore the gnawing feeling in my gut. I hated how easily she dismissed me, how she made me feel like I was just a mistake. But the more I thought about it, the more something inside me burned. I needed to prove her wrong. No one was going to see me as a failure anymore. It wasn't long before I decided to take action. I'd always been the kind of guy who played it safe, never taking risks, never going for the things I wanted. But that all changed. I started looking for ways to improve my situation, to break out of the cycle of mediocrity that had been my life for years. I found a few side jobs here and there, and I picked up freelance work wherever I could. Slowly, I started saving. The more I worked, the more the gap between Emily's world and mine seemed to grow. I hated the way she flaunted her perfect life, always throwing her success in my face. Every time she would mention her new car or her new apartment, I could feel my blood boil. But I refused to let her see how much it hurt. I was determined to get ahead, to build something for myself. I wasn't going to stay stuck in her shadow forever. One evening, after a long day at my second job, I was sitting on the couch, scrolling through job listings when I saw something that caught my eye. An auction for a property in the neighborhood I had grown up in. It was an old, run-down house, but the location was perfect and it was priced lower than it should have been. Something clicked in me. This could be my shot. I knew it was risky, but I felt like I was at the point where I had nothing left to lose. I did the math. I'd been saving for months, and though it wasn't a huge amount, I figured if I played my cards right, I could actually pull this off. I didn't tell anyone, not even my parents. They had already written me off, and Emily would only mock me if I told her. But I couldn't shake the feeling that this was it. The moment when everything could change. The day of the auction arrived, and my heart was pounding in my chest as I sat in front of the computer, watching the bids rise. I could feel the tension in the air, my palms sweaty as I placed my bid. My mind raced. Was I really doing this? Was I really about to take on this much debt for a chance at success? The bid climbed higher. I didn't know how far I could go, but I couldn't back down now. And then, after what felt like an eternity, the screen flashed. "You've won the auction." I had done it. I couldn't believe it. I was officially the owner of the house. But little did Emily know, this wasn't just about buying a house, it was about showing her that I could be more than what she thought of me. This was the start of something big, something she would never expect. As I sat there in shock, staring at the screen, I realized just how far I was willing to go. Emily had called me useless. Now, it was my turn to make her see how wrong she was. The first few days after winning the auction were a blur. I couldn't stop thinking about the house, about how this could be the thing that finally turned my life around. I started making plans immediately. It wasn't much yet, just an old property in need of a lot of work, but it had potential. For the first time in years, I felt like I had a shot at something more than just struggling to get by. I kept the news to myself. I didn't tell my parents or Emily, they didn't need to know yet. I needed to prove it to myself first, show that I could actually turn this into something. The house was a mess, but I had a vision. I started working late into the night, getting estimates, making calls. My confidence grew as I watched the transformation begin. But then, one night, Emily showed up at my apartment. She didn't know about the house, but she had heard rumors. I'd been working hard, and my parents, still under the impression that I was failing at life, had mentioned that I seemed to be doing a little better. Emily, ever the skeptic, came to check up on me. She stood in the doorway, arms crossed, looking me over with that same dismissive expression she always had. "So, what's this I hear about you turning your life around?" she asked, her tone dripping with sarcasm. "Is it a real job this time, or are you still pretending?" I didn't let her bait me. "I'm working on something," I said, trying to keep my cool. "Yeah, right," she sneered, stepping into the room. "I'm sure you've got it all figured out. Let me guess, another one of your half-baked schemes to make up for being a failure. God, you really think I don't see through you, don't you?" I swallowed my anger, but it burned in my chest. She was still acting like she knew better, like I was still the same old screw-up. "Actually, I just bought a house," I said, the words barely leaving my lips before I realized what I'd said. Her eyes widened for a moment, but then she laughed a cold, mocking sound. "Oh, really? You? A house? That's rich, even for you." But something in me snapped. I wasn't going to back down anymore. "Yeah, a house. And I'm fixing it up. I'm going to make something of myself." I met her gaze with every ounce of defiance I could muster. "You'll see," she rolled her eyes, dismissing me completely. "Sure, I'll believe it when I see it," she said, turning to leave. But before she walked out, she turned back with a smirk. "Just don't get your hopes up. People like you, guys like you, don't end up winning. You'll never make it. You're just a joke." I watched her leave, her words still ringing in my ears. As soon as the door closed behind her, I slammed my fist against the wall. How could she still treat me like this? How could she still think I was nothing? But instead of letting the anger consume me, I channeled it into something productive. I wasn't just going to prove her wrong. I was going to make sure she'd never be able to say those words to me again. The next few weeks were a blur of hard work and late nights. I threw myself into fixing up the house with everything I had, my savings, my time, and every ounce of energy I could muster. There were days when I barely slept, working from dawn till midnight to get things in order. I was determined to turn this house into something not just worth living in, but worth showing off. I wasn't going to let Emily's words haunt me anymore. But as the house began to take shape, something inside me started to shift. It wasn't just about proving her wrong anymore. It was about me. I was finally doing something for myself, something I could be proud of. Every wall I painted, every piece of wood I nailed down felt like a small victory. The more I worked, the clearer it became. I wasn't just fixing up a house, I was fixing myself. But, of course, nothing ever stays perfect for long. One Saturday, as I was at the house sanding down a doorframe, my phone buzzed. It was Emily. I stared at the screen for a moment before picking up, half expecting some sarcastic remark about my latest project. But this time, her voice was different. She sounded almost desperate. "I need to talk to you," she said, her voice shaky. I'm in trouble," I froze. This wasn't the Emily I knew, the confident, always in control, older sister who never seemed to need anyone. The one who always looked down on me as if I was beneath her. "What's going on?" I asked, trying to keep my tone calm. I can't pay my rent," she admitted, her voice small. "I don't know what to do. I've been living paycheck to paycheck, and now they're threatening to kick me out if I don't come up with the money. Her words hit me like a slap in the face. I wasn't sure whether to feel sorry for her or frustrated that she was asking me for help. It felt like everything I had worked for was about to be taken away. The house, my dream of proving I could be something more, it all seemed so fragile. I'd been struggling to keep it all together, and now Emily was dragging me back into her world, the one where I was just a safety net for her. I can't help you," I said before I even thought about it. The words were out of my mouth before I could take them back. "What?" she said, her voice barely a whisper. "But you always helped me before. This is different, I swear. Please, you have to help me." Her desperation was clear, but I felt no sympathy. I couldn't keep fixing her problems for her, especially when she'd always treated me like I wasn't worth the effort. "I'm sorry, Emily, but you're on your own this time. I'm not going to be your backup plan anymore." There was a long silence on the other end, and then I heard her breath catch. I don't believe you," she whispered. "You can't be serious." "I am," I said, my voice steady. "You've always been able to rely on me when things go wrong, but not anymore. You've always thought I was useless, and I'm done proving you wrong for you." I hung up the phone, feeling a weight lift from my shoulders. The anger, the resentment, it was all still there, but now it had a direction. I wasn't going to let her manipulate me anymore. I wasn't her safety net. I was my own person, and it was time to show her exactly what I was capable of. The days that followed were a strange mixture of relief and guilt. Part of me felt like I'd finally taken control, like I'd severed the invisible strings Emily had tied around me. But there was another part. The part that still cared about her. The part that remembered all the good times we had before everything got so messy. That couldn't help but wonder if I'd made the wrong choice. I kept myself busy, throwing myself deeper into the house project. I started getting contractors in to help with the bigger renovations. The place was beginning to take shape. Brand new floors, fresh paint, updated appliances. It wasn't just a house anymore. It was something I was building, something I was proud of. Every time I looked at the progress, I felt a surge of satisfaction. But then came the letter. I wasn't expecting it. It came in a plain envelope dropped on my doorstep one evening after a long day of work. At first, I thought it was just another bill or a junk mail flyer, but then I saw the name at the top. Emily. My stomach sank as I opened it. I read her words, her handwriting spilling across the page in a frantic, almost pleading scrawl. "I'm sorry," it said. "I know I've always been awful to you. I know I've treated you like you were worthless, but I was just scared. I've always been so terrified of being overshadowed by you. I never wanted to admit it, but I've been jealous. You're always trying to fix things, and I didn't know how to handle that. I didn't know how to handle you being successful when I feel like I'm failing." The words hit me harder than I expected. For a moment, I was speechless, just standing there staring at the letter in my hands. She was admitting to everything. The jealousy, the manipulation, the way she had belittled me all these years. But it wasn't enough. She went on to say that she had been too proud to ask for help before, and that she was finally ready to change. The final line left a mark I couldn't shake. "I know I've hurt you, but I'm asking for your forgiveness. Can we start over?" I stood there in the silence of my apartment, torn. I had spent so long hating her for how she treated me. For years, I had allowed myself to be the scapegoat, the one who was always overlooked, always criticized. But now she was asking for my forgiveness. She was asking for a second chance. I wanted to say yes. I wanted to believe her, to believe that she had changed. But the bitter truth hit me like a ton of bricks. I didn't need her to validate me anymore. I had done it. I had worked for something I could call my own, something she couldn't take from me. I wasn't the failure she had always made me out to be, and I wasn't about to throw all of that away for an apology that might not even be real. I shoved the letter into the drawer of my desk, trying to ignore the pit in my stomach. I couldn't forgive her, Not yet, not after everything. She had done too much damage for too long. But that night, as I lay in bed, I couldn't help but think, what if this time she was sincere? What if she was really changing? I knew I couldn't hold on to the anger forever, but for now, I had to focus on me. And just when I thought I was ready to move forward, something unexpected happened. A few days after I received Emily's letter, I started to notice something strange. The house, the one I'd been working so hard to fix up, started feeling more like a battleground than a sanctuary. I was living my dream, finally building something for myself, but every step I took toward that dream seemed to stir up old ghosts. It started with a phone call. I didn't recognize the number, but I answered anyway. When the voice on the other end spoke, my blood ran cold. "Hello, is this the owner of the property on Maple Street?" the voice asked, polite but firm. "Yeah, that's me," I replied, my voice tinged with confusion. "Who's asking?" There was a brief pause, and then the voice continued. "This is a notice of a complaint. We've received reports that your property is being rented out illegally. It's come to our attention that you are leasing to someone who doesn't have a formal rental agreement, and we need to discuss your terms." My heart dropped. The person they were talking about wasn't just a random tenant. It was Emily. I had been renting her the house at an inflated price, yes, but I never expected it to backfire like this. I'd been careful, too careful. I thought the house would be a secret, something I could quietly use as a way to keep my revenge within my control. But now I was at risk of losing everything I had worked for. The conversation ended quickly with the promise of a formal inspection, and I hung up the phone, my mind racing. How had they found out? Was this part of some twisted game Emily was playing, trying to get back at me for refusing to help her? I paced around the house, suddenly aware of every corner, every creaking floorboard. I had put so much into this place, blood, sweat, tears, and now it felt like it could all be ripped away. I couldn't let that happen. I wouldn't let it. The next day, I went straight to the property to check everything myself. As I walked through the front door, I was hit by an overwhelming sense of déjà vu. I hadn't been back in weeks, and it felt different now, emptier. The weight of what I was about to do felt like a noose tightening around my neck. But then, as I walked down the hallway to check the back door, I stopped dead in my tracks. There, standing in the living room, was Emily. She was looking out the window, and for a moment she didn't notice me standing there. When she turned and saw me, her face was a mix of guilt and defiance. "I was wondering when you were going to show up," she said, her voice surprisingly steady. "What are you doing here?" I demanded, stepping further into the room. "I'm not going anywhere," she replied, her tone almost smug now. "I have a right to stay here. You can't just kick me out like this." I felt my fists clench at my sides. "You're not supposed to be here. This isn't just some free ride. You think you can use me, manipulate me, and then just walk away unscathed?" Her eyes narrowed. "You've already got what you wanted. I'm not a fool, you know. I see through you. You're just using this place to get back at me, to show me how much better you are now that you have something I want." I stared at her, feeling the anger rise up in my chest. "That's not what this is about. This isn't about you anymore. This is about me. I'm done being your punching bag, Emily." The words stung as I said them out loud. But I knew they were true. I wasn't going to let her manipulate me any longer. I had worked too hard to let her destroy everything I had built. Then, just when I thought things couldn't get any worse, she dropped the bombshell. "I'm pregnant," she said quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. The words hit me like a freight train. I stood there, frozen, unable to process what she had just said. You're what?" I asked, struggling to find my voice. "I'm pregnant," she repeated, her eyes now filled with a mixture of fear and hope. "And I need your help. Please, don't turn your back on me now. Not after everything." I stood there, frozen, my mind reeling. The words Emily had just dropped on me were like a punch to the gut, and I couldn't quite wrap my head around what she was saying. Pregnant. She was pregnant. For a long moment, I just stared at her, trying to process what she'd just told me. I could hear the blood rushing in my ears, my hands trembling slightly. Everything I thought I knew about her, about us, suddenly felt like a lie. "What the hell, Emily?" I finally managed to say, my voice barely a whisper. You're pregnant, and you're just telling me this now." She looked down at the floor, wringing her hands nervously. "I didn't know how to tell you. I didn't want to. I knew it would change everything." Her admission hit me harder than anything else she'd ever said. She was scared of the truth coming out, scared of the mess she had created. But what was I supposed to do with this information? She'd spent years treating me like I was beneath her, like I didn't matter. And now, just like that, she was expecting me to care? "Emily, you've used me for years," I said, my voice low and filled with frustration. "You've made me feel like crap, like I'm worthless. And now you expect me to just drop everything and help you? After everything?" She looked up, her eyes pleading. I know I've been horrible to you, and I regret it. But this is different. I don't know what to do. I can't do this on my own. Please, just this one time, help me." Her words cut through the anger that was building inside me. The old part of me, the part that still cared, wanted to reach out, to comfort her. But then the other part of me, the part that had been beaten down for years, was screaming, "No, not this time." I felt my chest tighten, a mix of guilt and anger clawing at me. She had no right to ask for my help. She had no right to expect anything from me after everything she'd done. I was done being her emotional punching bag. I'd spent my entire life trying to make her see me, trying to make her care, but I was never enough. "I don't owe you anything, Emily," I said, the words leaving my mouth with a finality that stunned even me. "You've always treated me like I was beneath you, like I didn't matter. And now that things aren't going your way, you want me to save you? I can't. I won't." She took a step forward, her eyes wide, desperation creeping into her voice. "Please, don't leave me like this. I can't do this on my own. I don't have anyone else. You're the only one I have left." I shook my head. "No, you've had me your whole life and you never cared. You used me until I had nothing left to give. I'm not doing this anymore." I turned to walk away, but before I could reach the door, I heard her voice break. "Please, don't leave me." For a split second, I hesitated. The old part of me, the part that loved her despite everything, wanted to turn around and hold her, tell her everything would be okay. But that part of me was gone. She had broken me too many times, and this time, I wasn't going to let her drag me down with her. I opened the door and stepped out, the cold air hitting my face. I didn't look back, but as I walked away, I felt something shift inside me. I wasn't just walking away from her. I was walking away from the person I used to be, the one who let people like Emily walk all over him. For the first time in my life, I was doing something for me, and that, more than anything, made me feel free. The days after I walked away from Emily felt strange, almost surreal. There was a freedom in it, but also a heavy weight that I couldn't quite shake. I had done what I needed to do, what I'd been avoiding for so long. But as much as I told myself that I was better off, a small part of me still wondered if I'd made the right choice. Could I really just leave her like that? I didn't hear from Emily for a few days after that. It was almost eerie how quiet it was. No messages, no calls. I half expected her to try and reach out again, begging for forgiveness or help, but nothing came. I started to convince myself that I had made the right decision, that I was finally standing up for myself after years of being mistreated. But then, one evening, I got a text. It was from my mom. The message was short, to the point. "Emily's in the hospital. She's gone into early labor. It's serious. She's asking for you." My heart skipped a beat and I felt a cold sweat break out on my skin. I stared at the screen, the words blurring as a rush of panic and confusion took over. This was it. This was the moment where everything could change. I hadn't been there for Emily, hadn't even spoken to her since that day. Was this karma for walking away? Was I supposed to go back, put aside my pride, and help her? I fought with myself, pacing in circles, the weight of the decision pressing down on me. I had spent my whole life being her backup, her safety net, the one she used when things fell apart. But now she was asking for me. No longer the proud, condescending sister who thought I was worthless. Now she was vulnerable, and I couldn't ignore it. With a deep breath, I grabbed my jacket and headed out. I didn't even know what I was going to say when I saw her. I didn't know if I was ready to forgive her or if I'd ever be able to. But in that moment, I knew I had to go. No matter how angry I was, no matter how much she had hurt me, I wasn't going to walk away from family when she needed me most. The hospital was cold, sterile, and full of the quiet chaos that comes with urgent situations. I stood in the waiting room looking around, my mind racing. Emily's room was down the hall, and the longer I stood there, the heavier my feet felt. Could I really face her? Could I really look her in the eyes after everything? When I finally pushed open the door, I froze. Emily was lying in the hospital bed, her face pale and exhausted, but her eyes, those same eyes that had once looked at me with disdain, now looked at me with something different. Fear, and a quiet, almost desperate relief. "You came," she whispered, her voice weak. I didn't know what to say. I didn't know how to feel. But I knew one thing. She wasn't the same Emily I'd walked away from. She was no longer the confident, self-assured person who had made me feel small for so long. She was fragile, vulnerable, human, and in that moment I felt something I hadn't expected. Compassion. "I'm here," I said softly, sitting down beside her bed. "I'm here." The room was quiet, except for the steady beeping of the heart monitor. Emily's face was pale, but her eyes, once sharp and filled with scorn, were now soft and vulnerable. She was still the sister who had tormented me for years. But at that moment, she was something else. Someone in desperate need. Someone I couldn't completely turn away from. Her voice was barely above a whisper when she spoke again, her eyes never leaving mine. "I didn't know who else to turn to," she said, her words heavy with the weight of regret. "I never thought I'd end up here, but I don't know how to fix it. I didn't even know how to ask for help before, and now everything's falling apart." I could feel the anger, the resentment I'd carried for years simmering just beneath the surface. But something else was there too, something that surprised me. Sympathy. As much as I had wanted her to feel the pain I'd endured, as much as I had wanted to see her brought low, this wasn't the victory I had imagined. Watching her like this, so broken, so lost, it didn't feel like justice. It just felt sad. "I never wanted to hurt you," she continued, her voice faltering. "I never wanted to make you feel like you were nothing. I was just scared. Scared of not being good enough. Scared of being overshadowed by you. I never knew how to handle it. So I pushed you away. I made you feel like you weren't important. And now I see. I see what I've done. I'm sorry." Her words hit harder than I expected. It was like hearing the apology I had always wanted, but it came too late. The years of being made to feel inferior, the constant belittling, was it all supposed to be erased by these few words? Was it enough to heal the wounds she had left behind? I took a deep breath, staring at her as I processed everything she had just said. I didn't know what to feel. Part of me wanted to yell at her, to remind her of everything she'd put me through. Part of me wanted to just walk out and leave her there, to show her that I didn't need her apology, didn't need her help, didn't need any of it. But as I looked at her, vulnerable, scared, fragile, something inside me shifted. I wasn't the same person I had been before. I wasn't the person who let her walk all over me, who accepted the role of the family's failure. I had built something for myself, something I could be proud of. And that was my strength now, not her apology. "I don't know if I can forgive you," I said slowly, my voice steady. "It's not going to be easy. You've hurt me, Emily. You've made me feel worthless for years, and I've carried that. But I'm not the same guy anymore. I'm not the one who lets you make me feel like nothing." She nodded slowly, her eyes filled with understanding. "I know, and I don't expect you to just forgive me like that. I don't deserve it. But I'm here, asking for another chance. Not to make things right, because I know I can't do that, but just for you to see that I've changed. That I want to change." I looked at her, seeing the raw sincerity in her eyes. For the first time in my life, I realized that this wasn't about me proving I was better than her. This wasn't about getting back at her anymore. It was about healing. It was about seeing her for who she was now, not who she had been. "I can't fix everything," I said quietly. "But I can be here for you now, if you really mean it. If you really want to change, I'll help. But this is on you. I'm not going to carry this anymore. She nodded again, tears welling up in her eyes. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you for even considering it. I know I don't deserve it, but I'll work for it. I swear, I'll make it right." I didn't know if I could ever completely forgive her. Maybe in time I would, maybe I wouldn't. But one thing was clear. I wasn't the same person I had been when I walked in here. I had finally taken control of my life. And maybe, just maybe, I could extend a hand to the sister who had once torn me apart. As I sat there beside her, I realized that the real victory wasn't about showing her she was wrong. It wasn't about winning. It was about moving forward. And, for the first time, I felt like I was. The days after Emily's admission were strange. I kept visiting her in the hospital, but each visit felt like a step into uncharted territory. We were both treading carefully, trying to figure out what this new dynamic meant. Her presence, once an almost suffocating reminder of everything I had fought against, now felt different. There was a softness to her, a vulnerability I'd never seen before, and it was hard to ignore the tiny seed of hope that maybe, just maybe, this could be the beginning of something new between us. But as much as I tried to focus on the potential of change, old habits die hard. Emily's past actions were like scars on my heart that I couldn't just erase. There were still moments when the old resentment would surface, when I'd remember how many times she'd made me feel small, and I could feel that familiar rage bubbling up again. I had spent so long being the one who was always overlooked, always discarded. But now she wanted my help? She wanted me to be the one to fix everything? The tension between wanting to be there for her and not wanting to be her crutch again was eating away at me. I had to remind myself that I wasn't responsible for fixing her life. I wasn't the one who had made the choices that led to this moment. But still, something about seeing her so small and broken made it hard to walk away completely. One afternoon, I decided to visit the house. The renovations were almost complete, and I needed to check on everything before I could finally list it. As I walked through the front door, a wave of pride washed over me. This place, once nothing more than an old, run-down property, was now a home. I could see the potential, the possibility of what it could become for someone else. It was a reflection of my journey. Rough, imperfect, but built with my own hands, my own sweat. But as I walked through the rooms, my phone buzzed in my pocket. It was Emily. I hesitated before answering. Part of me didn't want to be dragged into another emotional conversation. I was still figuring out where I stood with her, still trying to figure out what this new version of our relationship meant. "Hey," I said, trying to keep my tone neutral. "Hey, I need to tell you something," she said, her voice shaky, and I immediately felt the knot in my stomach tighten. "What's wrong?" I asked, my mind running through worst-case scenarios. I've been thinking about what you said," she began, and I could hear the weight in her voice. "I know you're not responsible for me. I know I've treated you terribly. But I need you to understand. I've never had anyone like you. Not really. I've always felt like I had to do everything on my own, and I've failed. And now I'm scared. I'm scared for this baby. I don't know if I can do this alone." I stood there in the middle of the house feeling my heart start to pound. Part of me wanted to tell her that she wasn't alone, that I was here for her, that we could figure it out together. But I knew I couldn't do that, not if it meant going back to the same old pattern. I couldn't keep sacrificing myself for her. I couldn't go back to being the fixer, the one who carried her burdens while she ignored mine. "Emily, I can't fix this for you," I said slowly, my voice firm. "I've done enough for myself. I've spent years trying to help you, trying to make you see me, trying to make you care, but I can't do it anymore. I can't be the one to save you." There was silence on the other end of the line. I could hear her breathing, soft and shallow. For a moment, I thought she was going to hang up, or yell, or call me heartless. But then she spoke again, her voice quieter than before. "I understand," she said, and I could hear the hint of tears in her voice. "I've always pushed you away. I've always made you feel like you didn't matter. But I'm not asking for you to fix me anymore. I'm just asking for a chance to be better. Not for you, not for anyone else, but for myself." The words hung in the air between us. I wanted to believe her, wanted to believe that this time she really had changed. But I had learned the hard way that actions spoke louder than words. "Okay," I said, taking a deep breath. "I'll help, but on one condition. You do this for yourself. Not for me. Not for anyone else. This has to be your choice, Emily. You've got to want to change. I'm not going to carry you anymore." There was a long pause, and then she whispered, "Thank you." I closed my eyes, the weight of everything we had been through pressing down on me. It wasn't easy to forgive her, and I didn't expect everything to magically fix itself. But maybe, just maybe, this was the beginning of something new. Not just for Emily, but for me too. The next few weeks were a strange, uneasy balance of progress and old patterns. Emily's hospital stay was long, and I found myself visiting her more often than I had expected. It wasn't that I was suddenly her savior. It was more that, despite everything, I couldn't fully abandon her. Maybe it was the blood we shared, or maybe it was the part of me that had always hoped she'd change. Either way, I started to see a shift in her. The bitterness that had always lingered between us was slowly starting to fade, replaced by something less toxic. Emily still had moments of her old self, those flashes of entitlement, the small, sharp comments, but for the most part, she seemed different, more vulnerable, more human, and it made it harder for me to stay angry. I kept reminding myself that this wasn't about me fixing her. I wasn't doing this because I owed her anything. But deep down, I knew I couldn't ignore her anymore. One evening, after a long day of work at the house, I went to visit Emily again. This time, she was sitting up in bed, holding her stomach as she gently rocked back and forth. The sight of her like that, so fragile, caught me off guard. She looked like someone who had been stripped of all their armor, left exposed and raw. When she saw me, she gave me a weak smile. "Hey, you look tired," she said, her voice softer than usual. "How's everything going with the house?" I nodded, even though I felt like I hadn't slept in days. "It's coming along. Slowly, but it's getting there." I sat down beside her, avoiding eye contact as I let my thoughts drift. I had to admit, the house was becoming more than just a project. It wasn't just about revenge anymore, or proving something to Emily. It was about me. It was about building something that was mine, that I could look at and say, I did that. Something to remind me that I wasn't the failure I had been made to feel like for so long. Emily watched me for a moment, her eyes filled with something unspoken. "You know," she began slowly, "I've been thinking a lot about what you said. About how I've used you all these years. I didn't realize how much I hurt you until now. And I can't undo it. I can't fix the past. But I want to try. To be someone you don't have to walk away from." I felt a lump form in my throat, and I quickly looked away. She had always been the one with the power, controlling everything, controlling me. And now, for the first time, I was seeing her as someone who was trying to rebuild herself from the ashes of all the damage she'd caused. It was a humbling realization. "I don't know if I can forgive you right now, Emily," I said quietly, my voice steady but strained. "But I can see that you're trying. And that counts for something." She nodded, a tear slipping down her cheek. "I don't deserve your forgiveness. I know that. But I'm not asking for it right now. I just want a chance to show you that I'm not the person I used to be. I don't want to lose you again." For a long moment, we both sat in silence, the weight of her words hanging in the air. I could feel the old walls I'd built around myself slowly beginning to crumble. But I couldn't ignore the voice in my head reminding me that this wasn't the first time she'd promised to change. How many times had I been fooled by her before? "I don't know if things will ever be the same between us," I said, the words heavy with the truth I had been avoiding. "But we're not the same people we were before. Maybe that's a start." Emily's eyes softened, and she reached out to touch my hand. "It's a start," she agreed, her voice barely above a whisper. I didn't know where this would lead. I didn't know if I'd ever fully forgive her, or if we would ever be close again. But for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was no longer bound by the past. I was free, and maybe, just maybe, Emily was too. As I stood up to leave, Emily's voice stopped me. "I'll be okay," she said quietly. "I promise." And for the first time, I believed her. The weeks after Emily's hospital stay felt like the beginning of a new chapter, one where we both tried to move forward, despite the years of hurt and betrayal that had shaped our relationship. I visited her less frequently, which was a relief in some ways. I had to focus on my own life, on the house, on everything I had been building. But every time I thought I was moving on, I would think about Emily and wonder how she was holding up. She kept her promise to work on herself, and I could see the change. It wasn't instant, nothing ever is, but it was real. She started going to therapy, something she'd always refused to do before. She was learning how to handle the weight of her actions, how to confront the jealousy and insecurities that had always driven her. It was slow progress, but it was progress. One night, after a particularly exhausting day at the house, I sat on my couch, scrolling through my phone. That's when I saw it. A text from Emily. She didn't text me often anymore, and every time she did, I couldn't help but feel a little anxious, unsure of what to expect. I need to talk to you. I've been thinking a lot, and I realized something. I just want to apologize again. I never fully understood what I did to you. I thought I could just push you away, keep you in this place where you were always there when I needed you. But I was wrong. I see now how much I've taken from you, and I'm sorry. I'm really sorry. I stared at the screen for a while, letting the words sink in. I had heard apologies from her before, but this felt different. It felt like she was finally owning up to everything, not just trying to get sympathy or forgiveness, but truly understanding the pain she'd caused. I didn't know how to respond at first. There was still so much anger, so much unresolved hurt, but as I sat there, I realized that I had spent so much time focused on punishing her, on making her see how wrong she was. It had consumed me, and in the end, it hadn't healed anything. So I decided to reply, but not with the bitterness I had always carried. I wasn't going to let her have that power over me anymore. I know you're trying. I see that. And it's not easy for either of us. But I think we're both finally getting to a place where we don't have to keep hurting each other anymore. I don't know what this means for us, but I do know that I'm not holding on to the past anymore. I can't. I hit send and sat back, unsure of what to expect next. A moment later, my phone buzzed again. Emily's reply was simple, but it meant more than anything she had ever said to me before. Thank you for everything. I hope one day I can be the person you deserve. But I'll start with being the person I deserve first. I let out a breath I didn't realize I was holding. For the first time in years, I felt like I wasn't fighting for something that wasn't mine to fix. I wasn't trying to make Emily into someone she wasn't. I wasn't begging her to change anymore. I was finally letting go of the anger and the resentment that had defined so much of my life. I didn't need her approval, her forgiveness, or her validation anymore. I had found my worth on my own. The house, the work I'd put into it. It wasn't just about proving something to her. It was about proving something to myself, that I could stand on my own, that I could create something out of nothing, and that I was worthy of respect. As I lay in bed that night, I realized that this was the closure I needed. Not from Emily, but from myself. I had been fighting a battle I didn't need to fight anymore. The only person who could hold me back was me, and I wasn't going to let that happen. I don't know what the future holds for me and Emily. Maybe we'll build a relationship again. Maybe we won't. But I know this. Whatever happens, I'm no longer a failure. I'm no longer the scapegoat of my family. I'm the man who built his own future, who stood up for himself, and who finally chose to stop letting the past control his life. And that, more than anything, is the victory I've been fighting for.